Sometimes to get a fresh perspective on things, we just need to get away from it all. This is Jonah's situation. Jonah, a prophet, a messenger of God, running away from God, ends up having to be thrown overboard for the sake of the lives of the sailors. Then he somehow found himself in the belly of a big fish. We find in this lesson how Jonah, stepping out of his normal environment, was able to look at things from a different perspective. This is part 3 of a 6-part series on running away, but still restless. Our key text is Jonah 4:11, the New King James Version, and it says, "And should I not pity Nineveh, that great city in which are more than 120,000 persons who cannot discern between their right hand and their left, and much stock?" Jonah 4:11, the New King James Version. Our title for part 3 is A 3-Day Rest. In Jonah 1, we discovered that Jonah's attempt to run away from God did not come without problems. Though he found rest in the bottom of the ship, it was short-lived. His rest was interrupted when God miraculously intervened by causing a raging storm. Consequently, to save the rest of the crew members, Jonah had to be thrown overboard. It really gets interesting when God orders a big fish to save Jonah from the watery grave by ordering this big fish to swallow him up. It is only after Jonah finds himself in a forced 3-day rest in the stomach of this big fish that he realizes how very dependent he is on God. You see, sometimes we have to be brought to the place where we don't have none of the comforts that this world offers to realize that Jesus is who we really need. Meanwhile, while in the belly of this big fish, realizing his need to depend on God, Jonah prays. Let's listen in on Jonah's prayer in the belly of this great fish and find out what happens. It's found in Jonah chapter 2, verses 1 through 10, and I'm reading from the Clear Word Translation. From inside this great fish, Jonah prayed to the Lord. "I cried out for you to save me, and you heard me. From the tomb of the dead, I called for help, and you answered me. You had me thrown into the sea and let me sink to its very depths. The mighty winds rolled over me, and the waters were all around me. I said, my end has come, but I will reach out in faith and hope to look again toward your holy temple. The waters came over me, and I thought death was near. The sea surrounded me, and seaweeds wrapped around my head, and I sink into the sea like a person falling into a pit. I went down past the base of Earth's mountain. There was no escape, but Lord, you saved me through this great fish. You heard my prayer and brought me up from the deep. When I felt my life slipping away, Lord, I prayed to you, and my prayer reached your heavenly sanctuary. You heard me and saved me from death. Those who turn from you to other gods are disloyal and forfeit the grace that could be theirs. With a song of thanksgiving and praise, I renew my oath of loyalty and obedience. Salvation can only come from the Lord. So the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited Jonah up on the beach. Though Jonah was there in the deep, in a very dangerous situation, Jonah in his prayer prays about the sanctuary. He says he will look toward God's holy temple. What is going on here? Just as the temple formed a focal point of Jonah's prayer, it should be the central point in our prayers. Jonah's focus is on the earthly temple. It's not on the earthly temple. His focus is on the heavenly sanctuary, the place where God dwells. He realizes his hope is where God is and the salvation God offers. Caught in a trap and delivered, Jonah, knowing full well that he could not and did not deliver himself, Jonah's focus is not on himself, but on what God has done for him. Jonah praised God for his deliverance. Jonah finally understands the power of God and his ability to deliver him even at the brink of death. Here, Jonah has experienced God's grace. He did not deserve deliverance, but he prayed and God delivered him. God saved him. As the big fish spit him out, he, this runaway prophet, now understands firsthand God's love for him. What did Jonah learn from his experience? He learned that the only safe course for him, as with any other person, is to seek to do God's will. What happens after the big fish spits him out? Jonah decides to do his duty and obey God's orders. He finally heads for Nineveh. His decision to go to Nineveh had to be on faith because he was heading toward an exceedingly wicked city whose citizens might not like this foreign prophet telling them just how bad they are, what they need to do, and what is going to happen to them if they don't change. Does Jonah survive his mission? Do the people of Nineveh change their evil ways? Find out in our next lesson.